In light of the recent jury case against the National Association of Realtors and several large brokerage firms, including RE/MAX and Keller Williams, the award of $1.8 billion in damages, which could eventually rise to more than $5 billion under the antitrust rules, is going to change the commission structure of real estate agents for the foregoing future. What it means is that currently we have the seller paying because they're listing the property in the MLS, and they're advertising the property, and we have the seller paying both sides of the commission. This case is going to change that, and of course several other cases across the country, including a trial in Illinois for next year, is making changes to how commissions are paid, basically now forcing the seller to pay only the commission for the selling agent, and the buyer having to bear the costs of paying their agent. What this stems from is basically the antitrust rules, and fixing compensation across the board, and it may or may not save consumers of real estate commissions, but it will definitely affect the real estate industry. Okay, right now, the MLS is indicated as of November 15th, we are, as agents, able to list property in the MLS, indicating that there will be no commission paid for the buyer agent. What that means is real estate agents representing buyers must execute a buyer brokerage agreement with a buyer. When the buyer, let's say you're representing a first-time home buyer, most first-time home buyers are not going to be able to pay a buyer brokerage commission because they barely have enough to make a down payment on a house. And what it'll do is will affect their ability to qualify for a loan. And that's the adverse effect of executing a buyer brokerage agreement with a buyer that has limited resources. Now, when it comes to jumbo loans and people who are affluent, it doesn't really affect them that much, and they're used to negotiating their contracts most of the time. So, they don't mind negotiating for, a buyer's agent to go out there and find them the most appropriate real estate investment for them. But the people who, barely qualify for loans at this point, now affected by high interest rates, are going to have a very difficult time with finding a property unless you, as an agent, negotiate with the seller's agent for a commission on a property where, they've listed it and indicated that there is no commission to be paid. And because the basis of the antitrust rules is that it's price fixing. So when we look at the real estate commission, what they want to do through this litigation is take the burden of the 6% standard fee that most 6 or 7% that most of the seller's agents across the board have on their listing agreements with the seller, and make that more of a negotiable point, meaning the seller's agent can now negotiate with the buyer's agent for a commission, so it's not a fixed amount. Okay, now the burden is on the selling agent, though, and not necessarily on the seller to provide that compensation. So when you're out there as an agent and you're negotiating for a commission with the selling agent, keep in mind that has to be done prior to making an offer on a property. Okay, you cannot negotiate the compensation that you will receive and make it contingent on that offer. They've made it very clear that that will not be tolerated. So you as a agent representing a buyer must actually negotiate that compensation at or before showing the property, and make sure, as a buyer's agent, that your buyer brokerage agreement with your potential buyer does indicate if the seller or selling agent does not pay a commission, that your buyer is going to bear the burden of doing so. It's going to definitely cause a lot of issues with regard to what in fact was negotiated. There's going to be a lot of litigation that stems from this. The best practice right now is to put everything in writing. So when you're representing a buyer, go out there and talk to the buyer beforehand and indicate, that the seller is no longer, particularly paying commission, and that the buyer may have to bear the burden of your services. Okay. It definitely does make changes in the industry. Common practice is when you're representing a buyer to actually execute an agreement anyway. That way, you're guaranteed to be able to get compensated for your services. But, it is going to definitely change, the way it's going to give the seller pretty much an advantage in the transaction. And, again, with high interest rates, it's going to deter a lot of buyers from buying property at this time. So, keep in mind, if you're representing a buyer, that, if you're doing, and that's one of the things that we see when we do creative financing and creative deals in real estate investing, and working with real estate investors is that they're used to negotiating every point. It kind of gives the investor a bit of an advantage. But now what it says is that you need to have, as a buyer, you need to have an agent that can that's skilled in negotiations, and that is also very good at real estate in creative strategies in real estate, because traditional financing may not be something that a buyer can go forward with. And there are a lot of federal laws and rules with regard to the mortgage industry that prohibit and that restrain, I guess it puts parameters on what a seller can and cannot do, and how much out-of-pocket costs and so forth will the buyer will be able to bear. And with gifting rules, a lot of buyers, particularly first-time home buyers, receive gifts, that all has to be documented. Now sellers and buyers both, if a seller has a home that, the market basically is entry-level buyer, they're going to have to be creative in how they structure the transaction. So, it's a very interesting time. And I think that, it was kind of expected based on the fact that, everybody is going online now to look at real estate, and they make offers sight unseen. From an investment standpoint, it's all based on numbers when you're working with investors. But, now it's even more, a time where you as a real estate agent need to know how to creatively structure deals in order to get your buyer a home that they can afford. And it's also, from a seller's perspective, a time where they have to be creative too, and because less buyers are going out there and purchasing because of the interest rates. And this is going to affect it even more. So it's going to change, how many, it's going to definitely increase the days on market for a seller. And they're going to, have to be creative, drop prices and so forth. So, I hope that, the outcome of this litigation, it will definitely, they're going to, Keller Williams and the National Association of Realtors are going to appeal this. It's going to take many years. But in the meantime, the structure of real estate compensation, the structure of real estate deals, the financing of real estate deals, all of that industry is going to be affected, and it's going to change. So, stay tuned to our podcast to learn more about different types of deal structures, different ways of drafting contracts, and doing creative financing and creative structuring of real estate for both buyers and sellers. And stay tuned.